Hey, how's it going, guys? This is Courtney from NerdLyfe Labs. Just wanted to show you a new open source Raidus server that I came across. It's not really new. Apparently it's been out for a little while, but I just recently came across it, so it's new to me. Um, it's pretty awesome, man. I just needed something that I can start implementing into my labs as far as doing some, authentication services to my topologies that I implement, just so I can start focusing on the security end of things. Um, and the name of it is called ZeroShell. It's an open source. It's based off of a Linux distribution. It's pretty freaking awesome, man. It's pretty straightforward. The download itself was no more than I think 200 megs or something like that. Um, and this video is just going to be me demonstrating it using it in GNS3 via the Virtualbox plugin. I'm not going to show you guys how to do the install of the VM because it's pretty self-explanatory. If you're not familiar with how to install VMs on VirtualBox, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You just create the new VM, name it, go through all your settings, create your hard drive, mount the ISO, and then just literally hit enter and let it do its thing. It takes about no more than maybe 5 minutes, depending on what system you're on. But this video is more going to show you guys how to actually, get it working within GNS3. If you're not familiar on how to get things running in GNS3, get the VirtualBox added to GNS3, there's a couple good articles that I'll go ahead and add to the link description. One, for instance, is by Radovan. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name correctly, but I follow him avidly on the community GNS3 page. He has a crap ton of awesome tutorials on how to install different images from Alcatel Lucent to VirtualBox in there and getting Linux Core, Juniper. I mean, he has so many different tutorials, so I would definitely go and check out his link here. Like I said, I'll put it inside the video description. But breezuler.com. Like I said, so excuse me if I'm butchering it, but uh, kudos to him, man. He does a really great job and pretty thorough with his write-ups. I am particularly horrible with write-ups, so I do the video piece. He has a couple videos as well, but if you guys want to get some more detail on how to actually implement the VirtualBox VMs into GNS3 and how to do that setup from scratch, I would definitely recommend his blog here. A buddy of mine, Stuart, he actually did a little write up on it, implementing it in UNet Lab as well. So if you guys wanted to check it out, his website is here. I'll include it here. And also, what I would definitely do if I was you guys is check out some of his books, man. He has some pretty freaking awesome Cisco books, well, Cisco-based books. One BGP. I personally read the BGP and MPLS books. Fantastic. I haven't got my hands on his new VPN and NAT for Cisco networks yet, but I definitely plan on it. But I would, for more than like for sure, check out his webpage and kind of just read through it. And he as well has a junk told whole lot of different labs and different scenarios and recommendation for books and resources and tools. And I mean, it's a really awesome. I would say more of a high level, mid to high level networking page. He has some stuff for the NA, but not. Like I said, this is more on the in the higher level if you want to start getting into the more advanced stuff. Between him and Radovan's page. Definitely check it out. Oh, and also congratulations to Stuart. He just recently attained his CCIE. So, kudos to him, man. I'm right behind you, buddy. He definitely gave me some motivation. But as soon as I knock out all this crap that I've been working on, hopefully I can start resuming my studies again and literally knock it out. But, congrats to Stuart. But let's go ahead and get started. So essentially, I already have the topology pulled up here. What I did was I installed the ZeroShell VM. Now, one of the things that I did as far as for access purposes, because it has a web GUI as well as you have a web GUI as well as a CLI front end. I want to show you guys both. So the way how I have it set up is with GNS3 it has the ability to ride on top of the pretty much right on top of the VirtualBox instance that you already have installed, and it pretty much creates a clone. So you have a total of uh, well, you really have one main adapter that usually goes in. You can select as many adapters as you want, but usually the way if you have it configured in GNS3, it depends on how you're going to plug in your adapters into the virtual switches here. So in my particular implementation, Ethernet 0 is I use that for my quote unquote out of band management interface, which I have it connected to a VBox host only adapter. So all my VMs are pretty much linked to that, and that's my way that I can get into it without having to fire up any other applications to get to the web GUIs. So like I said, I use that as out of band management. This Ethernet 1 adapter is going to be my outside interface. More technically, it's talking to my LAN network, but that's it pulls a DHCP IP address from my LAN network. So if I wanted to leave the VM running and I can do some port forwarding from my router, I can be able to access the VM from the external on my network, and then also be able to get internet access to it as well, so I can pull updates or do some pretty cool things outside of the network. It's a like I said, it's an open source VPN. It's not really just Radius. I'm using it for the Radius purposes, but it has so many different features. So let's go ahead and get to the meats of it. One thing I want to show you guys is the ZeroShell shell. This thing is pretty awesome. I'm gonna go ahead and log into it now. Now this is what it looks like. Even when you boot the VM up, you'll get dumped into this window here. Like I said, it's really intuitive. It's really cool. You can do a lot of the main configuration stuff from here. You can reboot it. You can shut it down. You can look at utilities. The main purpose that I kind of get from this is that he's using it as like for WPA2 enterprise authentication. So if you wanted to set up a wireless access point and have your wireless controller authenticate to this Radius server, I mean he has it pretty much streamlined to where the integration is it's pretty much, I would say, integration for dummies, man. It takes no time. I'm not a wireless guy myself. I'm not a security guy. I'm primarily a route switch. So when I get into this stuff, I'm really lost. So I need it as simple as possible. So this VM does that for me, and it has so many different utilities and so many different features that it makes it do it makes that able to happen. And then you can also, if you're a Linux guy, you want to go in and just do your variables, you can still go in and get into the shell prompt and do your ls commands and go to root and go to your var. But for the most part, this is where, if you aren't familiar with the Linux command line and you don't want to go in and edit your variable config files or anything like that, this right here does it for you. And one of the most awesome things that like I said about it is that you have the front end, the web GUI front end. So I'll go ahead and log into it as if I haven't pulled this thing up before. So 192.168.56.3. That's the IP address that it's sitting on, that Ethernet 0 interface for the quote unquote out of band management that I set up here. So just showing you guys that. Log into it. You got the admin. And you set that all up when the initial setup happens here. And this is the front end for it. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You know, it's not anything super fancy, but it gets you straight to the point. And as well as all the things you need to get the hands of and start configuring, you get there. One of the things, like I said, Ethernet 0, that's the 56.3. That's my host only adapter. This right here is you see how it says dynamic IP? Ignore this IP. I take this computer to work sometimes, so this is the IP address that I set for it when I'm using the public access point at work, so it doesn't give it a DHCP address. But ignore that right now. But you can see it's able to pull dynamic IP addresses from DHCP. This is the IP address that the VM has now. It gives you the MAC address. I mean, everything is just straightforward, right in your face. In this Ethernet 2 interface, this is the interface that I have incorporated into the GNS3 topology. It's pretty flexible. You can actually, if you wanted to do some trunking, if you want to turn this into like a uplink to a .1q trunk, you can add additional VLANs. You can give those VLANs IP addresses, so you will have separation of different networks, and you can have different subnets pretty much talking to that switch, or different routers talking to this main VM via VLAN tag, so you can do some segmentation if you need to. So like I said, the flexibility is there. These are some of the other features. You got the router feature, you got DNS feature, you got DHCP, you got the VPN feature if you want to do IPsec tunnels. You have QoS, and then one of the cool things about it is that it comes in with a built-in load balancer. So if you wanted to terminate two internet connections to whatever the case is in a production network, and you want to be able to load balance across two ISPs, you totally have that feature. Or if you want to load balance to like say like a network resource in a data center or something like that. You know, whatever your imagination takes it or whatever your production needs have, you could pretty much accomplish this. Of course, it being open source, you don't have the old enterprise support system like you would on some other the popular you know, products, but you don't have to pay that $50,000, you know, $100,000 license fee to use it. So that's one of the cool things about this thing, man. I would also read through the privacy if you plan on integrating into an enterprise. I don't see there's a problem, but sometimes there is, depending on some of these flavors of the different Linux distros. They have different user rights and privacy concerns. So if you do plan on doing it, go ahead and do this. For my purposes, I am totally using it for a lab, so that's the main reason why I'm actually configuring this thing. Um, so I just want to show you guys the initial configuration. So when you start this up, you're going to go ahead and just hit the Radius tab, go to Radius. Now, normally on default, it's actually shut down. So you would have to just pretty much just click that and save, and then it turns it on, and at that point, you're good to go. Another thing that you're going to need to do is create user accounts, which is really, really simple. So you just go to the users tab, and you will go to add, and you pretty much put your username. It'll automatically, so we'll just do test. We'll just show you how to do that. Test, it'll automatically give you a home directory in the Linux kernel there back in the back end of this. You can assign it to a group. You can give it a group ID, zeros administrators. But if you have different groups created, you can assign your usernames to groups. And it also has LDAP implementation. So if you have Active Directory already running, you can actually have it tie in to your Active Directory, existing Active Directory, or Kerberos as well. You can also get into your Kerberos if you have a Linux authentication based system. So like I said, the flexibility is totally there. It's freaking pretty awesome. I already have usernames created. In my situation, I put my username for me and then another one for Cisco. That's just for the lab purposes. So let's go ahead and go to GNS3. In this particular instance, I'm actually using an IOU router. Show you guys my IOU VM. This is the VM that's running in the background here. So that's what I'm using to actually, you know, simulate the router connection in this scenario. And we'll go ahead and pull up the command prompt. So one of the things that I did do is I already pre-configured the IP addresses. So you can ping. So the IP address, let's go back to the GUI here. The IP address that's sitting on the actual router that we had was 10.100.0.250. So let's go ahead and do that IP address ping. You can see it's successful. So, you know, we got communication to the box. So phase one is done. Now, uh, I personally, I don't have a lot of experience doing a lot of the AAA communicate configuration, so excuse me if I make a mistake, but we'll also figure it out. But also, you know, in the meantime too, what we'll also do is we'll do a packet capture just to show you guys how this is working. So I'll start a capture on the switch port interface, right? And Wireshark will start up for us. And we'll just go ahead and add the filter for radius. You can spell it right. Radius, right? Cool. So now that that's working. So let's go ahead and go to the Cisco router, config T. And first thing we need to do is we got to specify our radius server. So radius server, and we're going to call this ZeroShell, right? We'll just call that ZeroShell. Now, what you're going to have to do now is specify, well, first off, let me not get too ahead of myself. One of the things that you're going to have to do for your radius, obviously, is you're going to have to set up your authorized clients. I already did that here by adding client name router1 and then adding the IP address 10.100.0.1/24 with the shared secret of Cisco. Obviously, your secret wouldn't be this easy if it's, you know, production network, but just to get it working, this is what I, you know, already got configured. So when it tries to authenticate to it, it'll automatically know that this router 1 is going to try to talk to it to try to authenticate it using the user account on this server here. So back to regular scheduled programming. So we'll go ahead and we're going to have to add that key Cisco there, right? So what we're going to do is address, and we're going to add IPv4 address. So we're going to put the IP address of the actual server. Now we're going to have to do the accounting port. So Cisco uses a default port of 1646 for accounting and then 1645 for authorization. Since this is pretty much based off of FreeRadius, the backend of the ZeroShell VM is based off of FreeRadius, the server that it's using. It's going to be using 1812 for your authentication port and then 1813 for your accounting port. So you just got to make sure that's specified. So that's phase one of the configuration, right? Now we're just gonna have to specify a authentication, a AAA policy, right? So we're gonna do AAA authentication. We're gonna go to login, right? You can do the default list. In this case, we're just gonna create one for Telnet just to show you guys that it's not gonna be authenticating against the local database. So we're gonna go to Telnet and we're gonna specify group. And we're going to specify this. Oh, first, actually, I'm sorry. Let's go ahead and first specify the AAA group. So server group, and we want to specify a radius group, and the server group name is going to be ZeroShell. Perfect. So what we're going to have to do now is specify the actually radius server within the AAA server group. No, it's a couple of task steps, but it works. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and then as well, I already created the server, the radius server group, and we're going to call that ZeroShell. Right? So that's specified now. So what we're going to need to do is create our authentication policy. Authentication login, and we're going to call this policy telnet, right? And then we're going to specify the radius group, the server group as where is it at? Da 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 da. Oops, too much. Server group zero shell. Right. And that's it. We're going to specify that. So next thing we need to do is apply that policy to the V2I port. We'll just go to port 1. And then we're going to go to login, authentication. We're going to call that telnet to reference that policy that we created. And then we should be good. So just to do some tests, we're going to go ahead and just telnet to ourselves, right? 10.0, 10.100.0.1. We're going to get prompted with a username. So let's go ahead and type in the username C Baxter, and I'll put in my password. Now you can see that it went in. Perfection. Now we can check in the Radius server to make sure that we're actually getting the request by going to show request, and as you can see, login OK. I didn't set the time on it, so the time offset is really off right now, but you can see that I just logged into it on port 2, which is the Ethernet port that it's referencing that the request came from. Another way that we can also verify is let's look at the actual packet capture. So you can see my source IP is going to be the my actual IOU router, which is the .1, to the destination of the 250, which is my VM, the ZeroShell VM. And obviously, you're not going to get to see the actual request information, the authenticator information, because that's all encrypted. But as far as looking at the password, you can see the username is C Baxter, the password, which is encrypted, so you guys don't know what that is. And a couple of the attributes that was sent to the Radius server. And this is what we got back. And as far as the reply, we can see that, the account default, blah, 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 and this is what printed out on the screen there. So like I said, it's straight to the forward. It's pretty freaking awesome. Setup is mind-numbingly easy. I have a server 2008 machine that it took me at least a freaking 2 weeks to get it running because I am not a Windows server admin and I do hate having to deal with Active Directory anything. So as far as I can stay away from any Windows-based services, me personally, I try to do that, and I'm an open source nut. You can probably tell by some of my VMs that listed here. I have about 3 computers that have at least, 5 or 6 VMs built on it with different services. So that this is just a quick demonstration of it. Like I said, I'll link you guys to some of the documentation that's out there now. Um, uh, Stuart did a really good write-up using it in UNet. I personally haven't used UNet Labs, so if you guys are familiar with using UNet and you have a better idea of using that, go ahead and use it. Oh, see, look, he even niced out some of the capabilities of it. So, I mean, he did a pretty good job in the write-up. And if you want to learn how to do the VirtualBox integration, definitely look at Brezuler's Radovan Brezuler's blog. Like I said, he does a really awesome job. I've done a lot of different, I followed a lot of his guides doing a lot of the stuff that I did. I implemented the Alcatel Lucent stuff. I did the Extreme Network stuff. I've done my CSR 1000V based off of his stuff. So he has a lot of great stuff. Stuart has some freaking phenomenal stuff. So whenever you guys get a chance, check it out. All right, thanks for viewing.